Hey guys, welcome to another international diagram analysis. Today we're going to talk about export subsidies. It's a kind of subsidy when a country is already exporting goods and services, but the government is still trying to provide extra support to them just to give them, a little more benefits in order to facilitate the industry, right? So when you look at a diagram right here, I don't think I'm going to explain it again because we have already explained this in another video. So if you are interested, you can go ahead and take a look of that video just to have some recap in memories. All right, but now we're just gonna go right into the concept by drawing some diagrams and do some explanation. Okay, all right. So obviously, after being imposed with an export subsidy, the supply curve of that country is going to shift to the right. And we all know why that is the case. Cost of production is being brought down. And so obviously, you would see a new supply curve going from SD1 to SD2. All right, okay. And based on all the econ knowledge that we have learned so far, we all know what this vertical distance means. It means the subsidy per unit that we are having, okay? But just here, I need to give you a reminder. This kind of subsidy is a bit different because it is only applying to every single unit of export that you have been selling. All right, not the unit of goods that you are selling to the local consumers. Okay, all right, again, it is only applied to the exports. Okay, all right, so if you are exporting to another country, then you would get the subsidy. If you are only selling it to your consumers domestically, then you would not get that subsidy. Okay, all right, so if that is the case, then we would see something quite apparent. All right, before the subsidy was being imposed, when you look at the amount of exports, it was basically between Q3 and Q2. And now, after that, we can see if we are selling it at the same world price, which is PW, all right, then you would definitely see an increase of quantity supply from Q3 to Q4. So we could say that this right here, this range from Q4 to Q2, that should be the kind of, new exports that we're expecting. All right. And based on the concept that we just mentioned, for every single unit of export that we are selling, then we should be receiving the export subsidy. All right. So with that being said, for this range of new exports, then I should be able to receive an extra amount of benefit if I'm the producer. And so the extra amount should be the distance, the vertical distance that we are looking at. If we are able to draw ourselves another line right here and call this price PW plus subsidy, how about that? Then we are able to find out for this area that I'm trying to, let me try to use another color for this. All right, let's see. I'm gonna use blue for this. Okay, for the area of blue. All right, so this is basically the revenue from export. You could say that's the revenue from export after the subsidy is being imposed. Does it make sense to you? Because not only you would get the part of revenue from PW, but you will also get an extra benefit from the subsidy itself, right? So there you would have this blue area. But don't forget, not only you're going to sell your goods to another country, but you would also sell your goods to your domestic consumers as well at PW. So what is going to be the revenue from the domestic consumers? I'm going to use another color for this. I'm just going to use red, all right? Because, the consumers domestically, they are buying your goods at PW. And so, in this case here, if it is at PW, the quantity demanded is only at Q2. And therefore, if you are making the area of this revenue, all right, for the domestic consumers, then it will be the area of RET. All right, so basically, if you are being an export subsidy, so now the total revenue that you should be getting, it should be the area of red plus the area of blue. All right, okay, so that's going to be the case. But don't conclude the entire thing so early, because we can actually find something interesting from here onwards. Is that if we are being rational, then the producer is not going to distribute the resources like this. Rather, let's see what I'm going to do. All right, okay? So if I have to maximize my benefit as a producer, then maybe I am going to charge the local consumer an even higher price. Why is that? So take a look at this. Because, right now, if we are charging the consumer at PW, then we can only receive, the revenue from the red, like that. What if we charge the local consumers with a higher price? Let's say we're charging them with the price of PW plus S. So let's take a look of what would happen. All right, okay? So let's see. I'm going to cancel the original red area first. All right, just to show you the change. If we now charge the local consumers with a higher price. Okay, if we're charging them with PW plus S, this is what's going to happen. All right, at PW plus S, the quantity demanded is only at here, which is Q5. Let's call that Q5. All right. And so, which means that the total revenue that we will receive from the domestic consumers, it will become this red area. Okay. Does it make sense to you? Yeah. So you may be wondering, so what will happen to the gap that is between the red area and the blue area now? So this is basically what I'm trying to say when you become rational. Because we all know that if we are able to export goods, then we will receive an extra amount of benefit. And so if we are able to utilize the quantity of goods between Q2, which is here, well, let me use another color, Q2 and Q5, and then we try to, sell these goods to another country. Then for this amount of goods, not only we are able to sell the goods at PW, but at the same time, we are able to get the extra benefit from the subsidy. Okay? And so, if now we are selling the goods, the amount of goods between Q2 and Q5 to another country, then we are able to get revenue from another country, which is equal to the area that I'm going to shade right here. Okay, all right. So now compare to the red area and blue area combining together that you just saw like a few minutes ago. This combination is basically way bigger in terms of, the total revenue that a producer can get from both domestic consumers and foreign consumers. Okay, all right. So rationally, the producer, they are gonna, allocate the resources like this. All right. Okay. So that's gonna be, the basic understanding that we would look at when it comes to export subsidy. Okay, but not so fast, because now we are going to look into different stakeholders. Like, when we are having export subsidies, how this is going to affect consumers, producers, government, and also the society. Well, perhaps the workers as well. All right, okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, all right, so now I am going to turn these shaded areas into letters. It's always better if you're using letters in order to, show people different areas. It's way clearer if you do so, okay? Because, otherwise you may always have to change the coloring and also, the shades. It's quite tedious, all right? So let's just clean up the colors for now, okay? All right, so let me try to do that. Hey, just give me some second. All right, here I'm just going to, cancel this as well. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be such a hassle, but I will try to, recreate the structure that we just made. All right, okay. So yeah, so here, and I'm gonna cancel this as well. Almost there. All right, so should be okay. All right, so now I am just gonna recreate the structure that we just made. Q5, okay, and then now we apply letters, okay, in different areas. So just do it like this. It's gonna be quite simple. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, O, P. All right, Q, R, S, yeah, U. All right, okay, I think I got it right. Yeah, hopefully I got, the sequence of the letters correctly. Yeah, because, well, never mind. All right, cool. So let's just, stick with the plan that we are having right now. Okay, all right. So let's take a look of what will happen to different stakeholders if that is what would happen, based on our analysis just now. So let's take a look of what will happen to the consumers first. All right, so we'll take a look of the consumers, and I'm gonna put the impact on the right hand side. So for consumers, okay, all right, what will happen? So before, we should always look at the consumer surplus. All right, when we're trying to analyze the consumers, and we could see that based on the consumer surplus before, all right, before, yeah, I mean before subsidy. Okay, well, it was basically A, B, and C. Okay, all right, yeah, A, B, and C. But now, because the producers, they would like to maximize the profit, and that's why for the domestic consumers, they're gonna raise up the price to PW plus S, and therefore after that, after subsidy, you would find that the consumer surplus is now only A. So obviously CS is going down. All right, okay, so which means that consumers, they're not happy. Well, I mean, even if you're not looking at the CS, if you just look at the change in P and Q, you can also find something similar that would show you consumers, they're quite sad. All right, so you take a look of the price. Price is definitely increasing from PW to PW plus S. And then also the consumption, the quantity, is going from Q2 to Q5 in this case. Okay, all right, yeah, so before subsidy and then after subsidy. And so if that's the case, then you would find that consumers, they would be pretty unhappy. I'm just gonna draw a very sad face right here. You see, look at that face, super sad. All right, okay, consumers really sad in this case. So now let's move on to another stakeholders. Okay, all right, and we would go to the domestic producers. All right, which is also the exporters as well, because in this case they are basically exporting the goods. And when you look at the PS, okay, before subsidy, it was already pretty good. Yeah, because when you look at it before the subsidy, it's basically, wow, that's going to be a lot of letters. But let's take a look at that. F, G, H, I, L, Q, and M. Okay, all right. After that, once they are able to become rational and try to maximize their gain, all right, then they will be having a way bigger, PS, and which is on top of what you are seeing, the PS before sub, then you would find more, which is B, C, D, okay? And these are the extras. And then you would find the same areas after that, H, I, L, Q, M. Okay, all right? So, you could tell, obviously, the producers, they're so happy after being supported by the government, right, even further. And again, you can also take a look of the change in P and Q just to see whether or not they're happy. So, for PS, yes, it is an increase. And for P, now they're receiving PW plus the benefit from the export subsidies. And therefore, P should be increasing, from PW to PW plus S. So P is increasing. And then quantity, take a look at it. So before, the export is only Q2 and Q3, the distance of it. All right, okay? But now, if you take a look of the entire picture, I'm just going to clean this up. This one is not correct anymore. Okay, all right. So before subsidy, if you take a look at the total quantity that the producers they're able to sell, it's going to be Q3. But now, the total quantity that the producer is able to sell is going to be Q4, right? Okay, because not only you are able to export your goods between Q4 and Q5, but you would also be able to sell your goods to your domestic consumers, okay, which is basically the distance, like here, yeah, like here. All right, this is for the domestic consumer, okay, consumers. Okay, all right, so you can tell Q is also increasing. Okay, all right. So with that being said, they would be quite happy. They'll be quite happy. Okay, all right. So what now? So now we will talk about the government as well. The government, as we all know, based on the knowledge of subsidy, the government will be quite sad because they have to pay for the cost of the subsidy. But where is the cost of the subsidy? Okay, all right. So we all know that for each unit of export that we are selling, then we will be granted a subsidy. So we just have to find out the area, all right, or you could say the amount of exports that now we are selling, and we all know that, which is between, okay, new exports is between Q4 and Q5. Right? Okay. And we all know that the unit subsidy is the vertical distance that we are looking at right here. The green stuff, okay, the vertical distance that we know. All right. So which is basically well, let's call this let's call this sub. All right, let's call this sub. Okay. So if we are using the distance between Q5 and Q4, all right, multiplied by sub, then we will basically get, the cost of the subsidy, which is C, D, and E. Okay, all right? So, well, definitely, government, they will feel quite sad. All right, so I'm just going to draw like a very sad face again, all right, for the government. Okay, all right? So, so there you have it. But, before we talk about the society, I just want to talk about the workers as well. When when you look at the domestic producers, so when the producers they are feeling so good, right? When they're receiving such subsidy, obviously the workers they will be quite happy at the same time. All right, I'm not going to explain too much why they're so happy, because when the producers they're earning more, it will bring more like job opportunities and also income for the workers as well. So you just have to explain it like this. Okay, all right. So this is basically what will happen to these 4 stakeholders. Okay, all right. But now we need to get to the final stakeholder that we are looking at, which is the society. Okay, the society. All right. So how do we know the change in our society? Is the society getting better or worse? All right. So in this case here, we are always trying to compare the gains versus losses after subsidy. Yeah, after the subsidy. Okay, all right. So we're gonna look at the surpluses. So now we're gonna look at the the surplus. Always look at the surplus, the change of it. Okay, the change in surplus in order to find out some gains and losses. All right. Okay. So let's try to find out. And let's take a look at the gains. Okay. What do we see about the gains here when it comes to the surplus? As we can find out that, all right, if you look back, I'm going to use another color. Look back to the domestic producers. The change in PS. Well, the extra gain we will be able to find, it is the letter B, C, and D. The one that I'm using yellow to highlight. You see that? See that here? I'm just going to put gains B, so plus B, C, D here. Okay, all right. And then, do we have more gains here? Do we have gains from the consumers? Well, not really. I think we are seeing a loss from the consumers. So, for the consumers, what will be the loss? You see here, if you look at the consumers after the subsidy, they only have A as the consumer surplus. So they're basically losing B and C because of the intervention. And so we could say that about the loss from the consumers, definitely B and C. Okay, all right? But the loss is not just that. All right, remember, the government, they're also paying a cost for providing the subsidy. And therefore, we also need to consider that area as well as a loss. All right, so what is the area for that loss? Which is here, C, D, and E. Okay, all right, so we're going to put another loss next to the minus B and C. So now we even have minus C, D, and E. Okay, so now here's a simple step to know the net gain or loss, all right, based on, what we are seeing about the gains and losses that we are making because of the, intervention. We just have to simply, offset the gains and losses, okay, all right, among the letters. So we have some minus B and C, and we do have some, plus B and C. So let's try to offset them, all right, so B, C, B, C. All right, so there you go. But the thing here is we still have a minus C, and then there's a minus D here. We're going to offset it with the plus D. Okay, all right. So now, what have we got? We have got something interesting here. All right, is that we can still find a minus C and also a minus E here. Do you see that? That the minus C and minus E will become the dead weight loss. All right, because just like the other trade protection, the net loss when it comes to allocation of resources, it will become the misallocation of resources. And this is how we find out, based on this trade protection, the amount of misallocation of resources that we can see. Okay, all right. So that is pretty much how we can analyze the entire export subsidy based on this case. Okay, hopefully you will find it useful by watching this video, or even though there could be so much more analysis that we can see in this case. So, let me give you a list here, and hopefully, you can try to, find out these areas as well. All right, so you can also find out, well, let me try to extend this line here. All right, okay. You can also try to find out before a subsidy, the revenue from domestic consumers. Okay, all right. Or you can also find out revenue from foreign consumers as well. Okay, obviously you can also do this to after subsidy. Okay, after subsidy. So I'm just gonna put after subsidy here, after. All right, after here. So well, let's try to find out that very easily. Okay, all right. So revenue from the domestic consumers before subsidy. I think we can see that quite easily. So that would be PW times Q2. So that, let's give you a second here. PW times Q2. Okay, all right. And the rest, it will become the revenue from, the foreign consumers, which is, the area of exports. Okay, all right. So if you're able to use the PW, the world price, times Q3 minus Q2, then you will get, the revenue from the foreign consumers. Okay, all right. But now, after subsidy, you will find something different. Okay, after subsidy, let me try to make a border here. All right, after subsidy, okay, the revenue from domestic consumers, it will become PW plus S times Q5. Because, like we mentioned, if we would like to maximize the gain, then we should put a higher price for the consumers, the domestic consumers, and so we can, spend, the amount of some goods, selling them to the exports, as well, right? So that we can gain even a bigger, revenue from sales, right? So that's gonna be the revenue from domestic consumers after subsidy is being imposed. All right, okay. But what will happen to the revenue from foreign consumers, which will be PW plus S? Because we know that even though we are selling the goods to other countries at PW, because of the export subsidies, we're going to get some extra gain. All right, so, it's going to be selling it at PW plus the subsidy, which will give us the PW plus S, all right, as an actual receiving value. Okay, all right. So in this case here, we also need to multiply it by the amount of exports that we're going to have. Okay, because, we are selling it to the foreign consumers. So the new exports is going to be, Q4 minus Q5. Okay, so that is where you are able to see, the revenue from the foreign consumers after subsidy. Okay, all right. And obviously, you can still, there's one more thing that you can do. You can also find the total revenue as well, all right? Because, total revenue, all right, it's going to be quite simple. Is that you just have to put the two together, okay? The revenue that you get from the domestic consumers and also the revenue that you get from the foreign consumers, that's how you get the total revenue. And so, for before subsidy, I'm just going to say before here. before subsidy, you just have to put, if I just have to make a label for, you know, these items here, let's call that 1 here, let's call that 2 here, let's call that 3, let's call that 4. All right, so before it's going to be equal to 1 plus 2, and then after is going to be equal to 3 plus 4. All right, okay, so there you have it. So hopefully you would really find this video useful. If you see any questions that you don't understand, feel free to put some comments in the comment section below. All right, you know, I'll keep checking it. All right, if I see some questions, you know, I'll come back to you as soon as possible. Okay, all right, as always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.